Today, around the world, the connected web is giving new power to individuals who want to support Ukraine in their time of need.
Then we're going to hop down to Kentucky and take a look at what happened with the teachers' retirement system when they invested in a Russian bank. Did they lose their money or not?
And finally, South by Southwest, its upcoming return to being in person in Austin and the controversies that swirl around its Texas home.
I'm Laura Fitton. This is Future Forward.
I am Steven Rosenbaum. Let us launch. Hi, Laura.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
You know, we went back and forth as we were preparing this pod about how to include Ukraine. There's a lot of Ukraine news out there. The good news is I think both of us have some unique takes on it. And also we found some material that we're going to share with you. But we made the decision to also broaden and talk about some other things, in part South by, because it was in its heyday a fabulous party and great tech conference, and it may yet be again.
I owe huge career debts to that event, so I have very complicated feelings about it this year, but we'll get into that.
All right, so but let us start with what's going on in Ukraine, and you have some personal data to share here. This is a story from USA Today about sending a message of support and how Airbnb bookings are helping Ukrainians. I've seen this, and I have to say I was like, I don't know, how would I know what to book, and how would I know if I was reaching a person? And so tell us.
That's the beauty of it, right? So for me, this emerged out of an Airbnb hosts group I'm in. I do run an Airbnb. And at first I was like, oh, that's cool. One of the first posts I saw, a lot of hosts have these $100 coupons we get every 6 months from Airbnb, and we don't often spend them because we're not necessarily traveling on Airbnb, especially in the pandemic. And so the person said, look, use your host voucher, go book something in Ukraine, no brainer. Like, we're not out any money and we could maybe help somebody. But the more I thought about it, the more excited I got, right? Because this is a platform that has been around for so long. Hosts have their photo, their profile, the way they describe their home. They have reviews. There's like a real track record. So you can tell who this person maybe is, right? Like, we talk a lot about propaganda and hype and truth and lies, right? I'm sure there's some hype in some of these host profiles, but because they were created so long ago for the purpose of building trust, and because there's such a long track record in terms of, who wrote reviews, who went, you can really kind of tell. The last super powerful thing is the map. And the map is really what got me to go ahead and donate, which is why I'm actually in this USA Today story that we're featuring. It was the morning that Kherson had fallen. And I was like, well, I wonder if I could get money to an ordinary Ukrainian person on the ground in this occupied city. And it was so ridiculously easy. I think I looked at 4 different bookings before I picked mine. I, booked something and sent her, what's really a minuscule amount of money, but something to try and help. And before I even got around to writing a note to explain it, she had already written and said, thank you. I'm going to get this to people who are, doing things on the ground. And I was shocked at how well it worked. So then I, wrote it up, shared it on Twitter. And luckily this idea is coming from a lot of people all over the place. Airbnb has waived their fees. Best practice, book just one night and then send more money through the resolution center so that you leave space on their calendar for potential refugees and or other people trying to donate. And, look, if you're really feeling uncomfortable about this and that doesn't speak to you, there are many other ways to support. But I think there are a lot of people out there with unused credits on Airbnb, people out there who just really prefer to go person to person. And you can even write to the host first. So I think there's a lot of ways it de-risks it.
Here's what I love about this, and this is a lot of what we're going to talk about on the pod today. It's like there's something between stopping your whole life and being committed to dealing with a world problem and trying to actually do good and also, do your day job or make your podcast, do with other things you do. And what I like about this is it's not like click United Way, give them a bunch of money, call it a day. It's one effort beyond that, but with, I think, really measurable and soul-serving, impact.
She melted my soul because the other thing I didn't mention, I want to break into tears, when she immediately wrote back, was she wanted to make sure I knew that the Russian propaganda was wrong, basically. She said, I want you to know we were free, we were happy, we didn't need to be rescued. And yeah, which I already knew, but that was her first fear, that someone in America would think what Russia was saying was true.
So we have a bunch of things I want to cover. Before we do that, one other thing I just wanted to share is that the NYC Media Lab has put up a page of links and sources and places where you can help. It's, you can Google it. It's on our Twitter feed. It's on our Insta. It's on a lot of places. But we have a team member who is Ukrainian, and she helped us curate this page. All of these links are carefully sourced, places to donate, places to advocate, ways to get supplies to them. And as she explained it to me on Friday, they don't need sweaters and socks. This is not a time when they need, like, they have very specific supplies that they need, and so we laid that out. So we're all trying to do what we can, which brings me almost immediately to this question about companies and what they're doing, and whether or not that. I guess you could probably take either side of this conversation. There are a lot of companies pulling out of Russia. It's hard to know how much of that is symbolic and how much of that is real. And again, I say the things I'm reading, trying to be careful about promoting things that are accurate. But for example, there were images coming out of the subway in Russia in which people were walking up to the turnstiles, and Apple Pay had been shut off, and that struck me as very tangible. Like to be a Russian citizen and know that Apple is not supporting your country would make me wonder. Like, I like Apple. I like mostly what they do. Why would they not support? That's a very tangible way to deliver messages without going through media.
It's such a great point. It's its own form of media, your lived daily experience, and how that changes. Because we know, the new law passed in Russia makes media essentially illegal. You have companies pulling out to make a statement, but you also have them pulling out because they're worried about supply chain. They're worried about, losses. They're worried about employee security. It's a really complicated story why folks are pulling out, but I love what you just landed in terms of getting word to the ordinary Russian people. As worried as I am about the Ukrainian people, which is very, very worried, my heart is almost as broken for what's going to happen to the ordinary people in Russia as this situation progresses. Really scary signs from the regime that it's just all going to try and get locked down and faked yet again.
So this is from a website, marca.com. And this is a list here. So Apple is stopping the sale of iPhones, MacBooks, and Apple products in Russia. Facebook, Meta, Twitter, Google, Get Alphabet, and Netflix are all limiting access to Russia. General Motors, Ford, BMW, Volvo, and Mercedes-Benz have all stopped exporting into Russia. Big plane manufacturers such as Boeing and Airbus have suspended building projects. I mean, it goes on and on. I mean, it's a long list, and I have this sense that if you're a big company right now, it's not hard to get on this, to decide you want to be on this side of world affairs. That being said, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. I don't know if it's enough, is I guess my question.
Right. Will it act fast enough to make a difference? I don't know. I do want to draw the people's attention to something they don't often think about. One of the factors in a lot of these suspensions, particularly the shipping ones right away, people, when they think about the economy, I don't think they realize how much leverage the insurance industry has over everything else. And this is something I think about a lot in my work on the climate economy, because as we shift from a regular economy to a climate sustaining economy, what I call the climate economy, insurers are going to lose their money first because of damage. And insurers are also very well positioned to have leverage over. So if you want to build some huge fossil fuel project and you can get, the rights, the funding, and the government approvals to do it, but you cannot buy insurance, you cannot build that project. So that's something I've talked about a lot in the last couple of years. What I was seeing in Russia was, with Maersk having to shut down shipping right away, if you can't get a certificate of insurance for that shipment, you can't make that shipment. And just the fact that Russia is at war is enough for an insurance company to be like, no, we're not insuring this. It could get sunk. It could get lost, right? They know their risk factor has gone way up.
Interesting.
So there are a lot of business reasons these companies are pulling out. And I think we all need to be thinking very strategically about our role. Who do we buy insurance from? Are they continuing to insure Russian business operations? And of course, oil, right? Do we consume methane? Do we consume gasoline? Do we consume oil in our daily lives? How can we cut that back? Both of these things will exert leverage on, Putin's main resource here is money. And I'm glad so many sanctions are going up. I do agree. I don't know if they can work fast enough. It is terrifying, the genocide that's happening on the ground.
So when we were trading links yesterday, you said that you were watching Servant of the People, which I have to confess, for all of my endless consumption of news, I guess I'd heard about ish, but I went to watch it last night based on your recommendation. And a couple of things for our listeners. One, it's hard to find. Now, Channel 4 in the UK has bought the rights to it as of the last 24 hours, and I think they're playing it today. Channel 4 is not easily viewed in the US, and there is some negotiation going on with a streamer in the US. But maybe just tell the story of what the series is, and then I'll tell you my reaction to it.
Sure. I started watching this just because I kept hearing this narrative in the media of like, oh gosh, shucks, a comedian, haha, now he's president now. He used to play president, right? It sounded to me like, if you think of SNL and there's always someone who's playing the current president whenever there's a skit, right? It sounded like that to me. So I started thinking, well, where is this? Can I find it? And it is viewable on YouTube right now. That's where my kids and I have been watching it. Yes, the streaming rights, obviously, all of a sudden this guy's so famous and everybody is like, projecting so much onto him. People do want to know. I highly recommend watching the series because look, he created it, he wrote it, he produced it, and he stars in it. So whether we're getting unvarnished truth about who he really is as a person, I don't know. That would be a bit naive to make it sound that way. But I do think it's eye-opening, even if you're just watching the opening credits and looking around and seeing peacetime Kiev and contemplating what's at stake here. But if you dig a little deeper and start thinking, this man has a law degree. He brings up, the classics in the very second episode. Pluto and Herodotus are the opening scene. It does give you, if nothing else, a sense into who he wants to be, what he wants for his country. The entire thing is about regime change and reform. And so I think media have really been doing a disservice when they characterize him as like, shucks, he used to play the president.
And he's a comedian. Yeah.
And it is very funny too. I honestly expected it wouldn't be that good. When I lived in Russia, Russian TV, was kind of like, so I was like, I don't know, if this will be a great show. I really love it. My kids genuinely like it, and they are picky teenagers.
So I did not know any of the things you just said about him being a lawyer. I mean, again, to your point, the mainstream media has positioned him as a stand-up comic who's now president of Ukraine, and without giving away too much, I mean, the show is a little mind-bending in that it's a story of a high school teacher who gets into an argument with a friend, and it gets recorded and put on YouTube, and that makes him famous in Ukraine, and he gets elected president. So he's kind of
with one week left in the election. I mean, it's preposterous.
Well, I mean, yes, although, I mean, there is something. I mean, I hate to say this, but unfortunately, it also irks me that we're living in a moment in time where Donald Trump, who is maybe a billionaire but probably not, becomes a TV star impersonating a billionaire and then becomes president. So the idea that there's some weird cosmic upside down thing where the way you become known in a community is by being on an entertainment show. I guess I don't think at the end of the day that Zelensky wrote the show because he actually had a political aspiration and thought it would lift his political likelihood of election.
Yeah, I don't know if he personally wanted to or not. He certainly wanted better things for his country, as it reads. And yeah, certainly the guy you were talking about a second ago wasn't a billionaire, but he had billionaires who wanted him to be president.
Yes.
And that sort of theme, and I mean Trump, that sort of theme does come up in the show because the oligarchy is, personified on screen as who normally picks the leader. So that's kind of fun and interesting too. But I highly recommend people watch it. If nothing else, it's a part of the war that you can share with your family and not be miserable, but
Yes.
still be learning more about Ukraine, even if it's a fictionalized version.
All right, so let's move on to chapter 2 and talk about this Kentucky story uh, for a minute. So, you know, this is a bit of a warning of sorts. So there was this story that crossed the social media wire, as it were. Um, it must have been 2 days ago, and it essentially said the Kentucky retirement fund. The original story, which I don't have a link for, said that they lost $13 million, and
Yeah,
essentially the
lost
original
$1 million because of the Russian bank.
yeah,
Blah.
yeah, but no, because it was a credible source. There was details. It seemed like they had been in early, and why Kentucky's investing in Russia was a little puzzling, and there was some question about whether or not there was, a back channel from Kentucky to Russia, and if that's all you read, if you read this salacious but kind of compelling story about the weird connection between Kentucky, which Mitch McConnell, Kentucky, dot dot dot. Um, it seemed like another highly corrupt transaction, um, and that would have been, for most people that are scanning the news, which is what we now do. We don't read the news; we scan the news. That would have been enough to go, aha, more evidence of, Republican Russian, you know, camaraderie of some sort. It turns out, it seems, after having, as you did and I did, going 3 links deep, that that's just not true.
Right. I mean, they went in at 12 million roughly in 2017. Oh, sorry. They went in at 15 million in 2017. They went out at 12 million this week. Yes, 15 minus 12 is in fact 3 million. But then you dig a little deeper. In that interim time, they got 3 or 3.2 million worth of dividends paid out. So honestly, it was a wash sale. It really wasn't a significant gain or loss. This is the nature of investing. And by selling it this week, they were pretty smart because they probably would have lost a lot more if they'd waited longer. I don't know. It's also
And
such a tiny portion of the fund. These funds are huge, these pension funds.
and as much as I hate to admit it, if your 401k, if you have one, and you say to your broker, advisor, whoever you work with, hey, do I have any money in oil and gas, or do I have any money in Russia? What they'll generally say to you is, well, it's a little hard to say because index funds you're in have bought other index funds, and those index funds are in other, and and the bottom line is that oil, for example, is wildly profitable. And so, I mean, no,
It
I mean,
pays a
this
lot of dividends.
that yes.
Market
Um,
cap on Exxon has mostly slipped in the last 5 years, although it's back up now.
my only point being, you know, I guess my point in terms of this Kentucky story is, I think all of us need to be careful when something seems a little too good to be true. It very well might be.
Right?
Um,
It's this whole other form of misinformation that happens when the information is actually accurate, but nobody's going to do the work to read all the information and put together that accurate story in the end. And so we just get kind of the outrage share. And I think that's a really important lesson, especially as, again, my heart is just broken for what's happening to media in Russia right now and what that will mean for people. You have a civilization where most people do get their news from TV. You have a situation where nothing is on TV except for state TV. And, the disinformation is going to be so much more overt. But watch out for mis and disinformation everywhere you go as you consume media.
So I'll tell my Russia story. We told a little bit of this last week, and I made an effort to pull up the images. Um, so this is a TED talk that I gave in 2017 about fake news, and the actual topic isn't what we're talking about today, but the pictures in this story are worth sharing. This was come on. So these are my photographs taken in Moscow or Leningrad, and these were film slides, but the story was about my conversation with a Russian journalist, and he said this thing which I'll never forget. We were sitting on a sidewalk and drinking vodka, and it got to be very late. And he said to me, "You Americans, you believe what you read in the newspaper." He said, "Russians, we know to read between the lines to find truth." And, I hope that's still true. It was a long time ago. I suspect it's probably less true. But whatever these things we believe in, whatever these things we find to be truthful, I think we just have to check ourselves and ask, like, is that truthful because I want it to be truthful? There was an interview with a old Russian woman on one of the newscasts the other day, and they asked her on camera if she believed that Russia was going into Ukraine unprovoked, and she said, "No, no, 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 no. We're freedom fighters. We're saving them." And the reporter kind of questioned that and said, "Well, do you think that what are Putin?" And she said, Russia was in a very bad way when Putin took the job, and he has turned the country around, and there's food on the shelves, and I feel safer, and I like him. He's been good to me. And there is a certain humanity to that, right? He's been good to me.
Sausage, vodka, and bread theory of Russian government.
So
as long as people have enough of those three things, right? And the heartbreaking stories this week of a young woman and some other people in the article, but the young woman's the photo on it, calling home to Russia and trying to explain to their parents what's going on in Ukraine where they're living, and their parents just not believing them. And it echoes, any American on either side of the political spectrum can probably relate to that, because we have so many instances where, the part of the family that watches Fox News and the part of the family that doesn't watch Fox News no longer experience a shared reality. And it's so dangerous and so sad. Like I said, I'm really afraid for what's going to happen to the Russian people in the next 6 months.
All right, chapter 3. So this is not all right. So let's talk about South by. So first of all, like, tell me your South by story. You said it was career making for you.
Oh yeah, on numerous times too. When I had the idea to start 140, the Twitter app store, I can't aim. I had been working for months with a potential investor and some partners, and we were going to roll it out. And they decided they didn't want to get involved. And I was like, oh, okay, well, there goes 4 months of thinking this thing could happen. And I went to sleep depressed, woke up excited, and went, you know what? South by Southwest is like literally happening right now. So I called around. I got somebody who agreed to, cover my hotel if I repped their brand a little bit. I got some frequent flyer miles. They covered my ticket, I think, actually, because I didn't have a hotel. I was couch surfing that first South by Southwest. And I just walked around and I started talking about the vision. And my friend Dan Martell literally was like walking behind me, whispering in my ear what to say. He's like, tell them you're having a pitch call and they can all dial in to see if they can invest in your round. And, so I had that year, but then I had actually quite a few other years where I was able to make incredible career connections, human connections, friend connections. I love that event. I was supposed to speak at it in 2020 and launch enough.co. Brady Forrest was going to have me on the Ignite stage. And I'm glad it's back. I'm scared it's back on a COVID level. I probably should be going because, I don't have a revenue model to support my climate economy evangelizing yet. And that would probably be the place I could go and talk to it. But between worries about COVID and what Texas is doing to trans children right now, who have some of the worst death rates in terms of suicide and other self-harm, and they've now made it, illegal and made it child abuse to help your trans child, is absolutely inexcusable. And I'm glad you're bringing up Clubhouse. Man, I have a love-hate relationship with them too. I just think Clubhouse has made some very ethical, questionable things. The person who sexually assaulted me, who was a very famous VC, is alive and well and happy on there and has a big following. They had no qualms putting people like that on their platform from the very beginning, and still haven't, really done much. They say they've got a lot more systems in place. So part of me was like, yay, Clubhouse, thank you for standing up for trans kids. And then I read it and thought about it, and I'm like, oh, this is also actually a better activation for their brand, considering what their brand does and considering they know there are a lot of people sitting at home who wish they were at South by. There's always been kind of a para South by while South by happens, where people are tweeting each other and talking to each other and participating without being on site. So I don't know if this is like a bravo ethical move or a genius marketing move, or maybe a little bit of both. But I do agree it is ethically questionable to go to South by Southwest this year.
So I'm going, and I'm moderating a panel that I'm very excited about. Evan Shapiro is a brilliant media observer. He does this amazing media map that he'll be updating for us. And he kicked off the Tech Plus Storytelling event that the Media Lab did this time last year. That being said, I haven't been on an airplane in 2 years and some months, and this will be my first trip. And I have mixed feelings about Texas. I love Austin, but Austin is in Texas. So if you're going to be there, please join us, and we'll put the South by data in the show notes. That being said, I'm, and by the way, the Austin trans issue notwithstanding, South by often finds itself at the white hot center of important, complicated issues. I mean, Gamergate is not that long ago, and
no, and they messed that one up completely several times.
I don't know enough about. We'll have to talk about that another day. I don't know that I think when you bring this many issue-oriented, creative people together, there is a question about what they're responsible for when they put people in a room. That being said, I am excited to go. If you're going to be in Austin, if you decided to go, please reach out to me. Would love to catch up. I literally haven't seen anybody in 2 years, and I'm feeling like it's a little bit of a coming out party to be able to be back in person with people.
Same. I mean, not gonna lie, sitting here talking about it, I wish I could go. I kind of want to go, but I don't think I'm gonna go.
Yeah. So last thing before we run out of time, I was talking to someone who does a lot of national moving of people around the country, and he was talking about the dramatic growth in Texas and Florida. And I said to him somewhat cautiously, is this about politics? Is this people going to where, red state, blue state? And he said, no, we researched it. It's only about, it's about a lot of things, but he said it's fundamentally about taxes. And I went, oh.
That checks out.
I live in New York. New York is a very, 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 very expensive place. I can't imagine living anywhere else. I mean, you get what you pay for. I mean, I don't know why you'd want to end up living in Texas, but Austin has always been this little piece of Texas that wasn't Texas. And I think that might be harder for them to justify. That's part of what I'm cautious about is, will it feel like Texas or will it feel like Austin, having not been there in 3 years?
I'm sure it'll still feel like Austin. I have observed that migration pipeline. Ironically, one of the initial reasons, in addition to the nicer climate, was incredibly cheap housing. And, as more tech companies have opened there, and frankly, as people's perception that where they live can be totally decoupled from where their company is, yeah, lots of people are moving to warm climates and forcing those housing prices up. And the impact on Black and brown residents of Austin in terms of gentrification is also very jarring and shocking and sad. So it's a complicated dynamic, boy.
We are out of time. Thank you all for listening. Laura, thank you so much. This has been so much fun and serious and interesting. And thank you for bringing your passion and wisdom to this podcast.
Thank you. And have so much fun at South by.
All right. Sounds good. See you next week. Bye-bye.